Sydney's skyline glittered in the early morning light on July 30th, 2011. High above the city streets, the exclusive apartment complex at 171 Kent Street stood quiet, its floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting the rising sun. By 10 a.m., the tranquility shattered. A woman's scream echoed, and then silence. Moments later, Lisa Cecilia Harnum's lifeless body was found on the sidewalk, 15 stories below. But what had really happened in those final moments? Lisa was 30 years old, radiant, hopeful, and on the cusp of a fresh start. A Canadian by birth, she had relocated to Australia in 2007 to pursue a new chapter. A trained hairdresser, she was also a former ballerina, her grace and poise still evident in the way she moved. She had met Simon Gittany through mutual friends in 2010. On the surface, Simon was charming, well-dressed, smooth-talking, and living in a luxury penthouse. But beneath that facade was a darker current. To friends and family, Lisa seemed happy at first. She had converted to Christianity, started therapy, and planned a future. Yet something was off. Slowly, she began to withdraw from her social circles, stopped using her phone freely, and rarely went out without Simon. Those closest to her suspected something was wrong, but none could imagine just how controlled she had become. Simon Gittany had a history, a conviction in 2001 for tampering with evidence and assaulting a police officer foreshadowed a volatile temperament. But he was also manipulative, intelligent, and skilled in psychological control. Within months of moving in with Simon, Lisa's independence began to erode. He installed surveillance cameras in their home, not for security but to monitor her. He demanded access to her phone and emails. He restricted her movements, scrutinized her texts, and intercepted her conversations. To the outside world, Lisa was a picture-perfect girlfriend in a luxury apartment. Inside, she was a prisoner. Her personal trainer, Lisa Brown, became a silent witness to the torment. During private sessions, Lisa Harnum would open up, whispering that she wanted to escape, that she was scared. She confided that Simon often threatened her, emotionally manipulated her, and degraded her appearance and faith. Lisa was planning to leave. She had confided in Lisa Brown and her therapist, Catherine, telling them about a secret plan to flee the apartment when Simon was distracted. She was even preparing to move in with her mother, Joan, who had flown in from Canada to support her. In the final days before her death, Lisa took steps. She packed a bag and arranged for a getaway. She used coded language in texts, careful not to raise Simon's suspicions. She avoided confrontation, but her fear was palpable. She told her trainer, "He'll kill me if I try to leave." That Saturday morning, everything came to a head. Security footage from the building showed Lisa and Simon entering the elevator. Lisa appeared distressed, trying to conceal her phone, a signal that she was texting someone urgently. Simon noticed. His expression darkened. What happened in that penthouse over the next few minutes remains partially obscured. But at 10:03 a.m., Lisa Harnum fell, or was thrown, from the 15th floor. Simon Gittany would claim she jumped. Long before Sydney's gleaming skyline and high-rise shadows became her world, Lisa Cecilia Harnum danced in a much different place. A small town in Ontario, Canada, where dreams of grace and light took shape in a ballet studio with scuffed wooden floors and mirrored walls. She had always moved with a quiet elegance, a poised determination that her mother Joan noticed even as a child. Lisa wasn't loud or brash. She was introspective, emotionally attuned, and sensitive. The kind of girl who journaled her thoughts, gave her friends thoughtful advice, and believed deeply in love, family, and faith. Ballet was her first passion. She dedicated years to it, the early mornings, the aching toes, the discipline. It wasn't just about movement. For Lisa, ballet was expression, emotion, escape. And when she danced, the world was beautiful, controlled, full of grace. But life, unlike ballet, can be cruelly unpredictable. In her early 20s, Lisa suffered a serious knee injury that abruptly ended her dancing career. The emotional fallout was profound. The stage, her sanctuary, was gone. She struggled with identity, with finding purpose in a life that suddenly felt adrift. Still, Lisa was resilient. She retrained as a hairdresser and makeup artist, channeling her creative energy into helping others feel beautiful. It suited her. She had a nurturing touch, a gentle presence, and a gift for making others open up. Clients didn't just leave with styled hair. They often left lighter, unburdened, as if talking to Lisa had helped more than the cut or color. Yet something still felt missing. In 2007, seeking a fresh start and chasing the pull of adventure, Lisa moved to Australia. The sunshine, ocean, and open-hearted culture of Sydney offered her a clean slate. She lived in Bondi Beach, a postcard-perfect neighborhood with surfers, travelers, and cafe-lined streets. She made friends quickly. She joined a local church. She continued her work as a stylist. But above all, she was searching for love, for safety, for a sense of belonging that had eluded her since leaving ballet behind. It was during this period of rediscovery that she met Simon Gittany. Their first encounters were electric. He was confident, polished, worldly, the kind of man who could dominate a room with ease. He listened intently, asked the right questions, flattered with precision. He made Lisa feel seen, special, protected. And after years of quiet heartbreak, she leaned into it. Simon made bold promises. He offered her a future. He encouraged her faith. He told her she was the one. For a woman who had spent years trying to rebuild herself, Simon's attention felt like safety, like destiny. Within months, they were living together in a luxury penthouse apartment in Kent Street. Glass, steel, and sky above the city. From the outside, Lisa had everything. A beautiful home, a handsome fiancé, designer clothes, and a relationship that looked Instagram perfect before Instagram even mattered. But behind the shimmering facade, cracks had already started to show. In subtle moments, friends noticed Lisa growing quieter, less available, less confident. When her mother, Joan, visited from Canada, she too felt the shift. Lisa was still loving and kind, but more reserved. There was a nervous energy in her, a sense of needing to choose her words carefully. She didn't say anything outright, but mothers know. Joan would later say she felt something was wrong, but she couldn't name it. Lisa still smiled. She still reassured. But there was distance, as though her daughter was drifting behind some invisible veil, unreachable in certain places. Lisa's church friends noticed she stopped attending regularly. Her calls became infrequent. Her friendships began to fade, not out of disinterest, but out of something more subtle, permission or lack thereof. And so the isolation deepened. Still, Lisa fought for joy. She kept working. She trained regularly with a personal trainer named Lisa Brown, one of the few people who continued to see her regularly. With her, Lisa found small windows to breathe. And over time, she began to whisper the truth. She was not okay. She was scared, but not ready to leave. Not yet, because, in spite of everything, the control, the fear, the sadness, Lisa still believed she could fix it, that Simon would change, that love was supposed to be tested, that maybe, just maybe, the man who once made her feel like a queen would come back. Hope can be dangerous like that, but hope too was fading, and in its place, something colder was beginning to grow: survival instinct. At first glance, Simon Gittany was everything Lisa thought she wanted. He was charming, ambitious, self-assured. A man who moved through the world like he owned a piece of it. He wore tailored suits, drove luxury cars, and knew how to hold a room's attention. When he looked at you, it was like no one else existed. When he spoke, his confidence pulled you in like a tide. For Lisa, recently uprooted from her home country and still rebuilding her identity, Simon's attention was magnetic. Their relationship moved quickly. Within months, he had invited her to move in with him, to share a penthouse overlooking Sydney Harbor, complete with sweeping views and high-end everything. To the outside world, they were a picture-perfect couple. Stylish, young, in love. But Simon's charm was not effortless. It was deliberate, calculated, a performance refined over years of knowing exactly how to get what he wanted. And what Simon wanted, more than money, more than success, was control. At first, it was subtle. Lisa would make a comment about going out with friends, and Simon would raise an eyebrow. Not forbid her, just question her in a way that made her rethink her choice. He'd text frequently when she was out, asking where she was, who she was with, how long she'd be. He would call it caring. He would say it was because he loved her. Lisa wanted to believe him. When she expressed concern, he dismissed it. "You're overthinking," he would say. "I just want to protect you." If she challenged him, he'd become cold, withdraw affection, then flip the script. "Why are you pushing me away when I've done nothing but love you?" Gaslighting became a language he spoke fluently. It escalated gradually. He demanded access to her phone, reading her messages, questioning innocent conversations. If a male client or friend reached out, Simon would accuse her of flirting. Soon, Lisa began second-guessing everything she said, everything she wore, everything she did. He began controlling what she wore, insisting on modest clothing, criticizing her makeup. He told her she was gaining weight, that her style was cheap, that she needed to be a better Christian. He chipped away at her self-esteem, framing his insults as helpful corrections. And Lisa, who had already lost her dream of dancing and who carried deep insecurities, began to believe him. Behind the glass walls of their high-rise apartment, Lisa was growing smaller, not in body, but in spirit. The vibrant woman who once lit up rooms with her laughter was becoming cautious, quiet, and careful. She walked on eggshells, afraid to trigger his anger. Simon wasn't always cruel. That's what made it harder. He oscillated, one moment rage, the next moment tenderness. If Lisa cried, he would comfort her. If she threatened to leave, he would promise to change. He told her they were soulmates, that no one else would love her like he did. And in a way, he was right. No one else would love her like that because what he gave her wasn't love. It was control wrapped in the language of devotion. It was domination masquerading as care. Simon's behavior wasn't impulsive. It was strategic. He installed surveillance cameras inside their apartment, positioned not toward the doors, but toward the living space. He wanted to see what she did when he wasn't there. He monitored her from work. He demanded she FaceTime him to prove where she was. Once, he caught her whispering to her personal trainer, Lisa Brown, during a session. He rewound the footage and interrogated her about what was said. Another time, he read a private text to her mother and punished her with days of icy silence. Even her faith became a battleground. Lisa had become a devout Christian, attending Hillsong Church and engaging in spiritual counseling. Simon, at first supportive, later used religion as a tool, criticizing her prayers, mocking her beliefs, and even contacting her spiritual mentors behind her back. Lisa felt trapped, but she was also ashamed. She didn't want to admit what was happening. Not to friends, not to her family. She feared that if she spoke the truth, it would confirm her worst nightmare. that she had chosen wrong, that she was too broken to fix it, that maybe it was her fault, but still part of her resisted. She began journaling her feelings in private. Writing became her way of holding on to herself. Her entries, later discovered by police, would become windows into her desperation. In one entry, she wrote, "I feel like I'm living with a monster, but he's not always cruel. He can be sweet. He can be so good. But when he's not, I'm afraid of him." And yet, despite the fear, Lisa still clung to hope. She believed she could save the relationship, that if she just became more obedient, more loving, more devoted, he would go back to the man she first met. But that man never existed. He was a mask, and soon it would slip, violently, tragically, and fatally. The penthouse apartment on Kent Street was stunning. A crown of glass and steel perched above the heartbeat of Sydney. Its walls were windows, its floors polished, its view unobstructed. But for Lisa Harnum, it was a cage made of invisible bars. To the world, the home was a symbol of success. To Lisa, it became the epicenter of her unraveling. In those final months, Lisa was rarely seen outside the apartment without Simon. She'd once explored the city freely, worked with clients, met friends for coffee. But now, every outing required permission. Every destination was questioned. Every friend became a threat. Someone Simon believed might turn her against him. And so, her world shrank. The apartment had security cameras, not just at the building entrance, but inside their actual living space. This wasn't for protection. It was for surveillance. Simon insisted it was to keep her safe. But Lisa knew the truth. He was watching her. Always. Sometimes he would call her from another room and ask about something he'd just seen on camera. He would rewind footage if he thought she was whispering on the phone or smiling too long at a message. There was no privacy. Not in the kitchen. Not in the bedroom. Not even in the moments she was alone, because in reality, she never was. Simon saw everything. And Lisa, once a proud and confident woman, began to lose her sense of self. The psychological toll of constant scrutiny, the paranoia, the pressure, the need to appear calm even when breaking inside, consumed her. Still, she tried to hold it together. She kept seeing her personal trainer, Lisa Brown, for early morning sessions, the only time she could speak freely, if briefly. In those small, stolen windows of time, she opened up. She whispered about the surveillance, the emotional abuse, the manipulation. She said she wanted to leave, that she was making a plan, that she was scared. Brown listened, gently encouraged her to get out, offered support. But there were limits. Lisa was still trapped by fear, and by the psychological chains Simon had so carefully constructed. Lisa's therapist, Catherine, became another point of refuge. In those confidential sessions, the truth poured out more fully. Lisa spoke of feeling like she was being watched at all times, that her every move was analyzed and criticized, that Simon had begun checking her menstrual cycles, monitoring her health, and accusing her of infidelity for no reason at all. Catherine saw the signs, the classic indicators of coercive control, a form of domestic abuse as dangerous and devastating as physical violence. Lisa wasn't being hit, but she was being erased. And yet, Lisa was still deeply conflicted. She loved Simon, or at least, she loved the person she thought he was, the man from those early months, the one who had made her feel beautiful, adored, secure. She clung to the possibility that the old Simon could come back, if she could just do the right thing, say the right words. That's how coercive control works. It convinces the victim they're the problem, that they've overreacted, that they're too emotional, too sensitive, too dramatic. It makes them doubt their instincts, their memory, their very reality. Still, Lisa kept planning. In the background, quietly, she began preparing for a future without Simon. She packed a bag in secret. She made arrangements with her mother, Joan, who had flown in from Canada to support her. They whispered plans in private. How to get her things, where she would go, how to slip away unnoticed. But even that had to be done carefully. Simon could sense when something was off. He had a predator's instinct attuned to changes in mood, behavior, energy. And in the final week of July 2011, he began to tighten his grip even further. One night, Lisa sent a message to her mother from the bathroom, hiding in a corner, whispering into her phone with trembling hands. "It's getting worse," she typed. "If anything happens to me, you'll know who did it." She knew the danger. She knew the risk. But she was almost ready. She had a plan. On the morning of Saturday, July 30th, Lisa was going to escape. She would wait until Simon left for coffee or got distracted. She'd take the bag she'd hidden. Her mother would meet her nearby. They'd go to the airport. She would be free, but she never made it out the door. By July 2011, Lisa Harnum's reality had become a life lived in coded whispers, rehearsed glances, and silences heavy with dread. Every moment outside Simon's view was an opportunity and a risk. The plan to leave him wasn't bold and dramatic. It was quiet, methodical, terrified. She was no longer just scared of being monitored. She was scared of what would happen if he found out. Every escape attempt required choreography. The tiniest error, a wrong message, a missed call, a stray look, could lead to a confrontation. And Lisa had seen what those looked like. Explosive, cold, laced with threats. No hitting, not yet, but his rage cut just as deep. Lisa's confidants were few but vital. Her personal trainer, Lisa Brown, remained one of her only consistent contacts outside the apartment. Their sessions, brief as they were, became a lifeline. During early morning workouts, between stretches and sets, Lisa would reveal slivers of her world. "She's starting to unravel," Brown would later recall, "like someone desperately trying to stay calm while drowning." Lisa admitted she had no privacy, that even the bathroom wasn't safe, that she had to whisper into her phone and delete messages immediately. Brown urged her to get out. Lisa always nodded. But leaving Simon wasn't as simple as walking out the door, because in Lisa's world, leaving wasn't safe. Still, she tried. She spoke to her therapist more urgently. She started packing a bag in secret, clothes, ID, essentials. She hid it in the bathroom cabinet behind towels. She asked her mother Joan to stay nearby in a hotel, just in case she needed to run. She began crafting her messages like puzzles. "Everything's okay," she texted Joan one night. "He's watching again. Just wait." The plan was simple on paper. She would wait for the right moment, when Simon went for coffee or took a call or left for an errand. She'd take the packed bag, slip out the door, and meet Joan nearby. They'd go to the airport, gone in hours. But nothing was simple with Simon. He had grown more suspicious. He paced more, checked her phone more often, read her facial expressions like a script, searching for deviations. When Lisa asked if she could see her mother, he refused. When she tried to go to church, he questioned the sermon afterward, digging for signs of rebellion. By the last week of July, Lisa had begun to break. She stopped eating properly. She lost weight. Her hair thinned. Her smile, once warm and full of light, had faded into something barely there. Even the apartment, so luxurious and pristine, began to feel hostile. Too clean, too silent, a place of watching. The cameras didn't blink, but she knew they were always on. One morning, Lisa Brown noticed bruising on Lisa's arm. Small, faint, but present. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. Lisa froze, looked away, then whispered, "I don't think I'm safe anymore." Brown's heart sank. "We can go to the police. I can help you." Lisa shook her head. "Not yet. I have to be careful. He'll know." By Friday, July 29th, the final pieces were in place. Lisa and her mother coordinated the plan through brief, encrypted exchanges. Joan would wait nearby with the suitcase. Lisa would leave first thing the next morning, quietly while Simon slept or showered. But even then, Lisa couldn't relax. Her nerves were raw. That night, she barely slept. She double-checked her escape bag. She wrote her mother one more message, one that would later become haunting in its finality. "I love you. I'll see you tomorrow. Please pray." But she wasn't the only one making moves. Simon, in his own quiet way, was watching more closely than ever. That week, he had checked her phone twice as much. He'd confronted her about a message to her therapist that sounded emotional. He even demanded to know why she was so calm all of a sudden. He could feel it, the shift, the distancing, the cold readiness of someone who had made a decision, and control was slipping through his fingers. For a man like Simon Gittany, that was intolerable. By the morning of Saturday, July 30th, two people inside that apartment were preparing for something. Lisa for freedom, Simon for war, and within hours, one of them would not make it out alive. Saturday, July 30th, 2011. The Sydney sky was pale and soft with early morning light. From the 15th floor of the Kent Street apartment, the city below looked peaceful, but inside, the air was tight with tension. Lisa had barely slept. Her escape bag was tucked behind a towel in the bathroom. She kept glancing toward the bedroom, where Simon lay in bed, scrolling his phone, unusually quiet. He hadn't gone for coffee that morning. He hadn't left her side. And Lisa knew, deep in her bones, he knew. She tried to keep her breathing steady. At 6 a.m., she texted her mother. "He's acting weird. Not sure when I can leave. Stay close." Joan waited anxiously nearby, unaware her daughter had just sent her final text message. Inside the apartment, Lisa moved carefully. She rehearsed her escape in her head. Bathroom, grab bag, door, stairs, lobby, mother. She even imagined what freedom would smell like. Fresh air, coffee, possibility. But Simon was watching her more closely than ever. He had read something on her phone the night before, a message to her therapist. Just one line. "Tomorrow. I can't do this anymore." That single sentence shifted something in him. He didn't explode. Not at first. He waited, studied her. His mind was spinning, rage swelling under the surface. For Simon, control wasn't just power, it was identity. If Lisa left, she wasn't just walking away. She was betraying him, humiliating him, making him a victim. And Simon Gittany refused to be a victim. At 6:23 a.m., surveillance footage captured Lisa trying to walk toward the apartment door, bag in hand. Simon intercepted her. Fast, aggressive, silent. He took the bag, blocked the exit, pulled her back inside. Then he shut the door. The next 69 seconds would never be captured on video. There was no audio, no camera inside the actual hallway between the bedroom and the balcony. But in those missing seconds, something irrevocable happened. Neighbors later said they heard a scream. Short, panicked, muffled, and then silence. At exactly 6:24 a.m., CCTV footage outside the building showed Lisa Harnum falling from the 15th floor balcony. A black silhouette tumbling through the dawn sky. She hit the pavement headfirst. By the time paramedics arrived, she was gone. What came next was a flurry of chaos. Simon called emergency services. His voice was controlled, almost cold. He claimed Lisa had jumped, that she had been troubled and emotional. He even sounded like a grieving partner, stunned, shocked, shaken. But something wasn't right. The doorman, who had seen Lisa crying the day before, gave a statement. She didn't seem suicidal. She seemed scared. Staff recalled Simon pacing the lobby after the fall, not in panic, but frustration. Like a man whose plans had been disrupted, not a man who had just watched the woman he loved die. Police arrived quickly. Simon told them Lisa had been unstable, that she ran to the balcony, that he tried to stop her, that he failed. But detectives were immediately skeptical. Why wasn't Simon crying? Why didn't he follow her over to the balcony to see what happened? Why had surveillance footage shown her trying to leave, not run to her death? And most chilling of all, why was there no distress in Simon's voice? While the investigation began, Joan, still waiting nearby with Lisa's suitcase, got the call. The scream on the other end of the line was unearthly. A mother's worst fear realized in a single breath. Lisa was gone, and Joan knew, instantly. She didn't jump, she told police. He did this. She was leaving him this morning. Simon, meanwhile, doubled down on his story. He allowed police to search the apartment. He surrendered his phone. He gave interviews. Calm, measured. But in every word he spoke, detectives heard the same thing. Control. He wasn't mourning a partner. He was mourning his grip. From the outside, Simon Gittany seemed calm, too calm. Within hours of Lisa's fatal fall, he stood in front of police officers and gave his account. She ran. She was emotional. He tried to save her, but it was too late. To those unfamiliar with coercive control, it sounded almost plausible, even tragic. But detectives weren't buying it. Not entirely. Something about his tone, his timing, his detachment. It didn't sit right. Detective Mark Lynch was among the first to see through the cracks. He had worked domestic violence cases for years. He knew the pattern. The charm, the control, the manipulation. And as he reviewed the CCTV footage from inside the apartment building, the story Simon had told began to unravel. The footage showed Lisa that morning, alive, composed, purposeful. She wasn't frenzied or erratic. She wasn't running toward death. She was trying to leave, bag in hand, walking to the door. And Simon? He didn't appear panicked. He didn't run after her out of concern. He moved with swift, quiet aggression, blocking the exit, dragging her back inside. Then, 69 seconds, unseen, unrecorded. Then, her body on the pavement. Detectives began building a timeline. They interviewed residents, staff, Lisa's mother, her trainer, her therapist, and a new portrait of Lisa's final days began to emerge. Not as a woman unhinged, but a woman trapped. She had told her therapist she feared for her life. She had told her trainer she was trying to escape. She had told her mother that Simon was watching her every move. They weren't the words of someone suicidal. They were the desperate whispers of a woman trying to survive. What's more, a forensic examination of Simon's phone revealed deleted messages, obsessive notes about Lisa's behavior, and disturbing diary entries. He had documented her menstrual cycle, tracked her weight, noted who she smiled at, and saved screenshots of her messages to friends. He wrote about fixing her, about watching her slip, about ending this before she could destroy him. The case had shifted. This wasn't a suicide. It was a murder. Then came the forensic analysis of the balcony itself. Experts found no fingerprints of Lisa's on the railing. None to suggest she had climbed it or vaulted over. There was no physical evidence to support Simon's version of events. But there was evidence of a struggle inside the apartment. Fibers torn from Lisa's clothing. Faint bruising on her arms, consistent with being grabbed or restrained. A broken fingernail near the balcony door. Detectives theorized that Lisa had been dragged, possibly choked, possibly lifted, and then, in a final act of domination, thrown. Meanwhile, Simon tried to control the narrative. He spoke to friends and reporters, told them Lisa was deeply troubled, claimed he tried to get her help, even painted himself as a protector, a man who had done everything he could for a woman who was beyond saving. But that illusion crumbled when police recovered footage from just a day before the fall. The video showed Lisa and Simon arguing in the lobby of the apartment building. Lisa is visibly upset. She's crying. Simon grabs her by the arm, then by the mouth, covering it, pulling her face toward his in a gesture that is anything but loving. And as he drags her back toward the elevator, the camera captures something chilling. Lisa turns her head toward the concierge desk, and she mouths, "Help me." That footage became the cornerstone of the case. A silent scream caught on film. A woman begging for escape in the final hours of her life. The media seized on the story. Headlines screamed, "Balcony death, suicide or murder? Tragic fall in Sydney's CBD. Help me." Lisa's final plea. Public sentiment began to shift. What once looked like a tragic accident now looked like a chilling act of control turned fatal. A man unable to bear the thought of losing the woman he couldn't own. And behind the scenes, the Crown was building its case. Methodically, carefully, piece by piece. In late 2011, Simon Gittany was arrested for the murder of Lisa Harnum. He pleaded not guilty. He still insisted. She jumped. But for the detectives who had traced every step of Lisa's final days, the truth was clear. She didn't jump. She tried to leave, and he made sure she never would. When Simon Gittany walked into the courtroom in July 2013, 2 years after Lisa's death, he carried himself like a man in control. Pressed suit, confident stride, a whisper of arrogance. His new partner, Rochelle Louise, younger, striking, loyal, sat behind him in the gallery each day, holding his hand, comforting him during breaks, scowling at reporters. She believed his version of the story fiercely, but the prosecution had other ideas. Crown Prosecutor Mark Tedeschi QC didn't waste time. He painted a clear picture from the outset. This was not an impulsive act. It was a pattern. A slow, corrosive campaign of control, surveillance, and fear. The case wasn't about a sudden act of violence. It was about possession and what happens when that possession is threatened. Lisa Harnum, the Crown argued, had become a prisoner in her own home. Isolated, monitored, silenced. Every movement scrutinized. Every relationship discouraged. Her phone checked. Her emails filtered. Even her therapy, guarded and cautious. Lisa hadn't jumped. She hadn't fallen. She had been thrown. The prosecution's theory was chilling. In the moments before her death, Lisa tried to flee. Simon caught her. They struggled. And when she resisted, when she told him she was leaving, he snapped. He didn't just stop her. He ended her, and then calmly cleaned up the story. CCTV footage was played in court. The infamous "help me" clip stunned the gallery. The jury watched, silent, as Lisa, weeping, was pulled back into the elevator by Simon. Her mouth covered, her body stiff, her eyes pleading toward the camera. The prosecution dissected his demeanor, his confidence, his lack of panic, his control. Then came the surveillance evidence. Dozens of messages from Simon obsessively checking her whereabouts, analyzing her tone, questioning her movements. Notes he'd kept about her behavior, her gym sessions, her periods, who she smiled at. Tedeschi leaned into the psychology. This was not a man who lost control, he told the court. This was a man who required control every second. And when she took that away, when she finally stood up, he reacted the only way he knew how. Simon's defense, led by a skilled legal team, pushed back hard. They called Lisa's mental health into question, subtly, carefully. Suggested she had a history of emotional instability, that she had expressed suicidal thoughts, that Simon had tried to help her, even protect her. He was trying to stop her from jumping, the defense claimed. He reached out, but she slipped. Tragic, but not murder. But their case lacked one thing the Crown had in abundance: evidence. There were no fingerprints from Lisa on the balcony railing. There were bruises on her body, defensive, unexplained. There was a lack of panic in Simon's 000 call. And, perhaps most damning of all, there was motive. He had everything to lose: his power, his image, his control. Psychological experts testified about Simon's narcissistic tendencies, his need to dominate, to punish, to maintain superiority. They argued that Lisa's decision to leave posed a threat not just to his relationship, but to his very identity. The trial lasted weeks. Reporters flooded the courtroom each day. The public watched, breath held, as the puzzle pieces came together. Lisa's face, smiling in old photos, glowing in ballet performances, was now the symbol of something far greater: the hidden horrors of coercive control. And Simon? He never flinched. He sat calmly through every testimony, every accusation, every image, until the final days of the trial, when the weight of the truth began to press down. On November 27, 2013, Justice Lucy McCallum delivered her verdict. There was no jury. Simon had opted for a judge-alone trial, confident in the logic of his innocence. But her words shattered that illusion. "I am satisfied beyond reasonable doubt that the offender was in a state of rage or extreme agitation. I am satisfied that the offender, in a fit of rage, launched her over the balcony. Simon Gittany was found guilty of murder. He showed no emotion. Rochelle Louise burst into tears. Outside court, she raged against the media, still convinced Simon had been wronged. But inside, justice echoed, not just for Lisa Harnum, but for every woman silenced by control, dismissed by doubt, or forgotten behind closed doors. The courtroom was still. Cameras clicked. The world held its breath. February 11th, 2014, sentencing day. Simon Gittany, once a polished image of control and charm, stood before Justice Lucy McCallum again. This time, the weight was heavier, the eyes sharper, the atmosphere crackling with anticipation. Outside the courthouse, a small crowd gathered, strangers, supporters, and survivors of abuse, many holding signs that bore Lisa's name. Her story had become more than a single tragedy. It had become a symbol of coercive control and of how subtle violence can turn catastrophic. Inside, Lisa's mother, Joan Harnum, sat quietly, holding a photo of her daughter. Lisa in a tutu, mid-performance, smiling with the brilliance of someone who still believed in happy endings. The judge's voice was firm, unwavering. Mr. Gittany's treatment of Ms. Harnum was possessive, belittling, and abusive. She was degraded, isolated, and controlled in every facet of her life. When she attempted to assert her independence, he responded with the ultimate act of control. He ended her life. It was not an act of passion, but an act of domination. And then, with finality, Simon Gittany, I sentence you to 26 years in prison, with a non-parole period of 18 years. For a moment, there was silence. No outbursts, no visible emotion from Simon. He blinked slowly, his jaw clenched, but the face of control, the one he had worn so effortlessly for years, was beginning to crack. The courtroom exhaled. Joan looked up at the ceiling. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks. Outside, she gave a brief statement. Lisa was kind, creative, and full of love. She deserved joy. She deserved safety. And she deserved freedom. Simon took all of that away, but he couldn't take her spirit. She is free now. The aftermath of the trial left ripples far beyond Sydney. In Canada, Lisa's hometown of Barrie, Ontario, a memorial was held. Friends and old dance teachers gathered to honor the girl they remembered. Vibrant, graceful, with a laugh that lit up rooms. They spoke about her dreams of opening a ballet studio, about how she always saw beauty, even in pain. In Australia, public awareness about coercive control began to rise. Advocacy groups pushed for stronger laws, clearer definitions, and more resources for victims who couldn't show bruises but were bleeding all the same. Emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, Lisa's story became a touchstone. Universities studied it. Documentaries explored it. Survivors referenced it. Politicians cited it in debates about domestic violence law reform. And in that strange, bittersweet way that only tragedy seems to carry, Lisa's voice grew louder after her death. Simon, now inmate number 366472, filed appeals. He claimed bias, misjudgment, misinterpretation, but each appeal was denied. Behind prison walls, his charm faded. He was no longer the master of his domain, just another number in a gray jumpsuit, replaying his version of the story in his head. Still unable to say the words, "I killed her," because control doesn't die easily, not in men like Simon. And yet, despite everything, despite the heartbreak, the loss, the public spectacle, Lisa's story didn't end on that balcony. It lives on in whispered warnings and courtroom speeches, in shelters and group therapy circles, in mothers watching their daughters more carefully, in women recognizing their own red flags and leaving sooner, in laws being reimagined. Lisa Harnum didn't get to write the ending she deserved, but she changed how the world reads the signs, and in that she saved lives. In the years after Lisa's death, time didn't dull the pain, but it shaped it. Joan Harnum, Lisa's mother, returned to Canada a different woman. The vibrant, laughing daughter she once held had become part of something larger. A movement, a warning, a name whispered whenever another woman said, "He watches everything I do." Joan threw herself into advocacy. She spoke at conferences, met with lawmakers. She started visiting shelters to talk to women who hadn't yet found their way out. And in every word she spoke, she carried Lisa with her. Not just as a memory, but as a message. If you feel like you're losing yourself, that's your first red flag. If he says it's love, but it feels like fear, listen to your body. If someone tells you to be quiet, speak louder. Lisa's name began to show up in legal discussions around coercive control laws. Her case became a teaching tool in psychology classes, a reference in media ethics courses, a test for the legal system's understanding of invisible abuse. She was no longer just a woman who died on a balcony. She was the woman who made Australia and the world ask, how many others have fallen without ever being pushed? In New South Wales, Lisa's death helped fuel the push for formal recognition of coercive control in domestic violence law. For years, legal frameworks focused on physical violence. But Lisa's story proved what survivors had long been saying. Emotional and psychological abuse can be just as deadly. It just doesn't always leave bruises. In 2022, the NSW government passed legislation criminalizing coercive control in intimate relationships, a historic shift. Lawmakers cited cases like Lisa's. Her name was spoken in Parliament, in courtrooms, in classrooms. Her voice, once silenced, now rang through the very institutions that had failed to protect her. Back in Sydney, people still pass by the balconies at Hyde Park Plaza without knowing what happened there. To some, it's just another high-rise, another view, another morning. But for those who remember, that balcony is haunted. Not by ghosts, but by silence. The silence of ignored signs, of broken spirits, of red flags brushed aside. It's the silence Lisa lived in and ultimately died in. And it's the silence her story has started to shatter. In a small apartment in Canada, Joan keeps a photo album of Lisa's life. There's Lisa on her first day of ballet, Lisa backstage in pointe shoes, giggling with her friends, Lisa at Niagara Falls, Lisa on her last birthday, eyes tired, smile tight, and then nothing. The pages after that are blank. But Joan doesn't see them as empty. She sees them as unfinished. There's more to tell, she says. Not about Lisa, about the women like her. Her story doesn't stop with her, keeps going. Every time someone listens, every time someone leaves, every time someone survives. Lisa Harnum was 30 years old. She danced, she loved, she dreamed, she tried to leave, she mattered, and in her silence, she changed the world.